Imagine one day you decide to go to a cello concert, and at that cello concert you meet a woman. And that woman later becomes your wife and business partner, and together you build a business which you sell for $875 million. That's the story of Ralph Gootee. So picture this, a Pixar engineer is at a cello concert in San Francisco, and he spots this woman across the room that caught his eye. So he decides to go over and try to talk to her, but she instantly shuts him down. We've all been there, right? But he's not going to give up that easy. He is a young and determined man, and he's just got the confidence where rejection doesn't even register. So later in the show, he sees her again, and this time he actually gets a conversation going. And lo and behold, she seems somewhat interested, and just before she left, she handed him her card. Now he doesn't know this yet, but to him, she's not just beautiful, she's also a construction engineer. And not so long after, they would end up going on a date, then another, and before long, they're together. But here's an important part of the story. A few months in, he's scrolling through her Google Calendar, and he notices this weird recurring event every Thursday night, 7 till 9, called Peanuts. Peanuts, he thought. That's odd. So out of curiosity, he decides to ask her about it.
What's this on your calendar? Like Peanuts 7-9. She's like, oh, well, she's like, I got this like startup idea, like we're trying to put blueprints on the iPad, but we can't find an engineer to do it. And I remember we were in Mission District in San Francisco. I'm like, dude, like, I'm an engineer. Like, what are you talking about? And that was how we started.
That woman was Tracy Young. The startup idea was called PlanGrid, and Autodesk bought it for $875 million. That is the story. So Ralph Gootee is not your typical construction tech founder. He was working at Pixar, like the actual Pixar, the animation studio, and his speciality was actually in data and image processing. Specifically, he was an expert in how computers handle really, really large files. PostScript files, PDFs, the kind of stuff that artists at Pixar would generate every day. Basically, huge, complex images that would crash most systems. Now here's where it gets interesting. You know what else has stored as huge, complex PDF files? Blueprints, construction plans, hospital drawing sets. The exact same type of files Ralph had been wrestling with at Pixar every day. He knew how big they were, how complex they were, and he knew most software couldn't handle them properly. And so when the iPad came out in 2010, Ralph gets an idea. He's going to impress Tracy. He's going to take one of her blueprint files and get it running on his brand new device and show her what he can do. And guess what? It crashed immediately. Adobe Acrobat crashed. The built-in viewer, 5 minutes to load a single drawing set. Completely unusable. And look, if that happened to you or me, we'd probably close the iPad and move on with our lives, right? The iPad can't do it. Move on, use your desktop or laptop instead. But Ralph's a programmer, and when a programmer finds something that's hard, they get excited to find a solution.
So it took me a month to write the initial viewer for her, and that's what got really interesting to me. It wasn't like a weekend. I was a pretty fast programmer. Like for me to spend longer than a weekend on something is a big project. And so I was, when a programmer finds something that's hard, you're like, whoa, this is cool.
He built a rendering engine that could display full drawing sets on an iPad. Fast, smooth, and something nobody else had been able to do. And that piece of technology, that core engine Ralph wrote to impress his girlfriend, was still the heart of PlanGrid's product 7 years later in 2018 when they sold. 7 years. Think about that. A piece of code he wrote to show off to his girlfriend was still running the product when they sold. That is insane. To understand why this problem matters so much, you've got to picture what construction sites actually looked like in 2012. If you were a superintendent or a project manager and you needed to check a drawing, you were either squinting at a massive paper set that's been rained on, or you were strapped into some kind of ergonomic bodysuit carrying a Windows tablet that weighed a ton. I'm not exaggerating. Ralph described the old tablets as having actual body straps, like a harness you'd wear just to carry the thing around site. Imagine this, you're a site supervisor, you've been on your feet since 6 in the morning and someone hands you what is basically a laptop in a backpack strapped to your chest and says, here, use this to track your drawings. You'd probably laugh. And then the iPad shows up. Thin, light, beautiful screen, but nobody had built anything for it. There was no Facebook app for the iPad. There were basically nothing for enterprise on it at all. But Ralph and PlanGrid, they had other ideas.
Mobile, it's kind of crazy to believe this, but when we launched PlanGrid, it was the only enterprise product on the iPad. The iPad did not have Facebook. Facebook wouldn't make an iPad app. It's the news is there. Zuckerberg didn't believe in the iPad. So there was nothing, there was nothing on the iPad. We were the first folks doing it.
They weren't just early. They had a genuine technical advantage that nobody in construction could match. PlanGrid was built from the ground up for mobile. Native apps, not clunky web stuff crammed into a tablet. And because of that, the experience was just different. It was fast, it was intuitive, and for people working on building sites where you need quick access to drawings without faffing about, speed was everything. Now the story could have stayed there. Cool prototype, nice idea, maybe it goes somewhere. But then two things happened that changed everything. First off, Ralph's co-founder Antoine, one of the original team, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer that had come back. Ralph's own mother was also fighting cancer, and the co-founders looked at each other and thought, what are we actually doing with our lives? So with that in mind, they chose to quit their jobs. Ralph left Pixar, Tracy left her construction career building hospitals, and instead they decided to travel and spend time with the people they loved and build this thing together. Eventually they applied to Y Combinator, and as you may have guessed, they got in, and with that they packed up and moved into their hacker house in Sunnyvale, where they literally building the thing out of the garage. And for a moment it felt like everything was falling into place until Antoine's cancer came back, and it came back hard. Unfortunately, he didn't make it through the program. He passed away midway through the batch, but before he died, he told the team one thing: you need another programmer. I've got the best one I've ever worked with, and his name is Kenny. Hire him.
So many times building a startup where you want to give up or complain or whine or something, and to know that a 27-year-old's dead that wanted to do it, really stuck you up on that, because you just wanted to do it for Antoine, right? How could you complain when that happened?
Kenny arrived the day Antoine left for France to spend his final days. For just a brief moment, PlanGrid had 5 co-founders, 5 people in a garage in Sunnyvale, grieving their friend, wondering if any of this was even worth it anymore. But Antoine had wanted them to keep going, so that's what they did. Y Combinator gave PlanGrid $17,000, and you know what they did with it? Spent every last penny on iPads. Because back in 2012, nobody on a construction site had had one. But man, everybody wanted one. So PlanGrid figured out this brilliant trick. They'd rock up to a job site, hand someone an iPad with PlanGrid already loaded on it, and say, it's yours, keep it. And as a result of this, contractors were falling over themselves to sign up. But here's what's really fascinating. The iPads got them in the door, sure, but they're not what made PlanGrid take off. What did was something they couldn't even plan for. Someone would use PlanGrid on a project in California, finish up and move to a new project in Texas. And suddenly there'd be 20 users in Texas that nobody at PlanGrid had ever spoken to. The product was spreading on its own, site to site, state to state, without them having to lift a finger.
When we sold to this friend group, one of them would go off and start a project in Texas. And all of a sudden, we've got 20 users in Texas. We didn't know. We were freaked out. Whoa, what's the Texas users? Where did they come from? And we had to trace the viral connections.
They didn't spend a single penny on marketing in Texas. Not one cold call, not one ad. The product moved itself. And that's the kind of growth that makes investors lose their mind. That viral growth combined with a new product that was genuinely better than anything else on the market meant PlanGrid was profitable before they raised their first proper investment round. And when they eventually did go out to raise, it was something else. Their Series A with Sequoia closed in 3 days. 10 different firms were fighting to get in, and the lead investor Doug literally drew them a heart on the term sheet. That's how badly they wanted in. So, PlanGrid just finished their Series A with Sequoia in 3 days. 10 firms are fighting to get in, and the product spreading on its own site to site and state to state. And guess who's watching all of this? The biggest name in construction technology history, Autodesk. Autodesk have been telling their own investors on public earning calls that they needed to make a major acquisition in construction. And when you looked at the market, there were only really two serious options, Procore or PlanGrid. Now, Autodesk had actually approached PlanGrid around the same time of the fundraise, but that conversation went nowhere. The numbers didn't line up and PlanGrid went with Sequoia instead, and the two companies went their separate ways. And from that point, PlanGrid just got on with it. They kept building, they kept winning on job sites, and they kept growing, but Autodesk wasn't going away. They couldn't. They told their investors this acquisition was going to happen. The market knew it, and PlanGrid knew it too. So while PlanGrid's scaling fast and everything seems to be moving in the right direction, there's this looming question in the background. Autodesk is going to come back. It's not if, it's when. But before that conversation happens again, a problem PlanGrid hadn't seen coming starts to bite. You see, there's something about super fast growth. It can be the thing that got you here, and it can be the exact same thing that stops you from getting there. PlanGrid charged per seat, per license, and when they were small, that worked. Simple, predictable, and easy to sell. But as they scaled, that model started strangling them. Because think about what per seat pricing actually means on a construction site. Every new person who wants access, that's another line item on someone's budget. You're not rewarding adoption, you're taxing it. You're basically telling your own customers the more your team uses this, the more it's going to cost you. And meanwhile, Procore's out there charging per project, one flat fee. Everyone on site gets in. There's no arguments about how many licenses you need, and that model was just easier to buy. And it was starting to eat into PlanGrid's business with the bigger contractors, the ones that really mattered. Ralph knew they had to change, but here is the problem. By this point, they've already got around 200 salespeople. Every single one of them has their commission structure, their targets, and their take-home pay built around the entire existing model. You try walking into a room of 200 people and telling them you're changing how they earn. That's the definition of throwing a grenade, and it gets worse. Contractors, i.e. their customers, had literally printed PlanGrid's pricing page off the website and pinned it onto their office walls.
Would print our pricing on our website out and stick it on their walls. So we'd be in a sales meeting and you'd be on Zoom or something, you'd look in the background, you're like, holy shit, that's our pricing website. They've got it printed on their wall. It's like taped up there.
Imagine walking into a negotiation and the person across from you has your own pricing sheet taped to the wall behind them. That's the position PlanGrid was in every single deal. Now Ralph did manage to make one big move. PlanGrid had this free tier where anyone with under 50 sheets could use the product for free. And people had figured out how to do every trick to stop them from going over that limit. They deleted sheets, swapped them out, they gamed the system however they could. And I mean, let's face it, that's probably something most of us would do. So Ralph, he killed it and moved on everyone to paid plans. And honestly, it caused chaos internally. Some of the engineering team was so upset that they actually quit. They felt like the company was betraying its original mission, becoming something it wasn't supposed to be. But it worked. It unlocked a few $1 million in revenue almost overnight. And Ralph says it was one of his biggest accomplishments as a product leader. But here is the important part. That was the small win. The real problem, the per seat model that was handing Procore deal after deal with the big GCs that was baked into everything. The sales team, the commission, the structures, the entire go-to-market motion. You can't just rip that out without blowing the whole thing up. So the one thing that was hurting them the most was the one thing they couldn't change. And that's what makes what actually happened make sense.
No one really wants to hear about the pain of it because we sold a company for $875 million. That's a great success. But the year we tried to, it's a tough year.
Now, what strikes me about Ralph's story is how many things had to collide for PlanGrid to exist. A Pixar engineer and a construction engineer meeting at a cello concert. The iPad launching at exactly the right moment. A technical problem that only someone with Ralph's exact background could solve. And a group of friends who were bound together by the loss of someone they loved. When I asked Ralph what advice he'd give to founders thinking about exits, he didn't talk about strategy or multiples. He talked about leverage. And not the kind you manufacture, the kind you earn.
That you can't build a company to be sold. It's like impossible. Like it's like not it's not even a good strategy. Building a company to be sold. You need leverage. Leverage is all that matters in business to me. Leverage. And so to have leverage, you can't be looking to be sold. That doesn't give you any type of leverage. Leverage is made through profitability. Leverage is made through having a war chest that you can last through economic downturns. Leverage is by having a lot of customers that love you. Those things give you leverage in acquisition talks.
And you know what? The thing I find most telling about what Ralph says isn't the $875 million. It's what he said at the end of our conversation when we asked him if he had any final words for founders in construction.
But construction, it's something very special to work with the construction industry. It's something I miss. It's something I feel when I'm working with our startups in the construction space, to be supporting people that are physically building buildings, physically building anything, right? Physically building infrastructure. This is a type of, I don't know, a type of satisfaction, type of existential value, if you will, that's very hard to find in any other industry.
Ralph Gootee didn't set out to build an $875 million company. He set out to impress a girl at a concert, and along the way he helped change how an entire industry works on site. If you want to hear the full conversation with Ralph, the link is in the description. And if this story hit home, subscribe. We've got more coming. I'll see you in the next one.